Welcome back to Bay Sunday. A correction to the website in the last segment. It is igniteca.org. Our next guest has been an aid worker, a volunteer, a researcher, a filmmaker, a student, and an author. She has traveled the world and spent much of her time in East Africa and the Middle East. She has witnessed just about everything in third world countries and has devoted the last several years to getting aid to those in need. She produced a 10-part film series on aid effectiveness and just finished a book called Beyond Good Intentions, A Journey into the Realities of International Aid. Part travel story, personal narrative, and a bit of a critique in there as well. Please welcome Tori Hogan. How are you?
I'm great, thanks, Ray.
You are a curious woman, aren't you?
Very curious.
You've been everywhere. What, every continent, 75 countries?
Mm-hmm. And I'm
Your
30.
Yeah, that's amazing. Your passport, how many have you gone through?
I have 4.
You have 4.
A couple are thick.
Yeah,
you're right, it's this curiosity, but also this inner sense of the world needs more than we're offering it right now. And I was 20 years old when I first became passionate about fixing international aid.
Well, we talked about your resume here on the elevator when you came up, but Duke undergrad, American University at Cairo, in Egypt, Fulbright scholar. Then you went to Harvard, and your emphasis was on forced immigration and refugee studies.
That's right.
So this has been in your blood.
It has been in my blood.
You've always been curious about this. How come? Where did this come from?
Well, I wasn't always. I actually thought I was going to be a geneticist of all things. That's what I went to Duke for. But I had this epiphany when I was working in Lebanon at the time, and I just felt this inner calling to do something good for the world. And I think a lot of viewers have probably felt that same sense of obligation almost to give back. But it wasn't long before I started working for Save the Children and realized my help was not helping.
Yeah.
And it was a really difficult thing to come face to face with.
Well, in your book, it centers around a young boy that you met in Kenya, how the story kind of starts, right?
That's right. I was 20 and I was working in Dadaab refugee camp on the border of Kenya and Somalia. And this boy stood up as I was interviewing a class of students, secondary school students, and he said, you know, a lot of aid workers come and go, but nothing ever changes. And if the aid was actually effective, we wouldn't still be living like this.
How old was this boy?
He was, I think he was about 16 or 17 at the time. And yeah, he called me out. He said, do you really think you have the answer to our problems? And I just had to stop for a moment and say, you know what, I think I might be part of your problems. Yeah. And that was the wake-up call. 8 years later, after I'd made a film series, I'd kind of made a name for myself as an aid specialist and also an aid critic. I realized that it was that moment, that boy, that had changed my life. And so I went back 8 years later to find him, and that's the story I tell in Beyond Good Intentions.
We've got some pictures from the book. Why don't you take us through some of those, and where are we? Tell us.
Well, I mean, this has been a 10-year journey for me all over the world. This was just in India a few years ago, back when I was filming my 10-part film series. And this is a great picture here about the fact that donors are really running the show here. This is a well in Cambodia where the donors got their name very prominently displayed on there.
Really? You get your name up on a plaque, huh?
Yeah, and we find there are a lot of problems with aid. One of them is that it's very donor-driven, and that people want to invest in sexy projects that they can take pictures with or put their name on. Right. And really, we need people to be investing in local communities, like here in Indonesia when they had a huge earthquake. Or rebuilding themselves.
And we were talking off camera. We just had hurricane relief money. We raised over $100,000 here at CBS, and it's going to go to the Red Cross. But does it really go to the people out there? Does it go to the Red Cross in general? And where does your money really go? When you think about 9/11, so much money was raised for the victims. But I know victims' families back in the East Coast, they never saw a penny.
Yeah, you hear those stories all the time. And thank God people are actually asking this question more often, saying, wait a second, I'm signing this check, but is it really helping? And what we find is that among the larger aid organizations, a lot of that money does need to go to maintaining the organization, you know, the administrative costs, the travel costs, all of those things. So the actual amount of money that gets down to the ground is much less than you would hope. And that's why I encourage people to first do the due diligence on the organizations you're contributing to. Make sure that they are worth, you know, your contribution. But also try to find ways to connect with smaller grassroots organizations. They need your money way more, usually. And if we can find ways to really know who to trust, then that money can go and make a much larger impact.
And this is big business. The number's staggering. $298 billion given to aid just last year.
There's no shortage of goodwill out there.
Right.
People want to do good for the world. And my theory is that that's great, but we really need to do it in the right way. You know, it's like the book says, beyond good intentions. It's not enough to have a good heart. You have to have good ideas, too.
Was it cathartic to write the book?
It was. It was incredibly cathartic. It helped me come to terms with this journey I've been on and understanding what is my role in all of this and how can I come to terms with a heart that wants to give, but a brain that really recognizes that we need to do it more conscientiously.
And right now, you're an aid, you critique how aid is given.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What do you do?
Well, it's not the easiest job to have.
I guess not.
You know, people don't always want to ask these questions. They do want to sign that check and kind of believe that it goes and saves some African child. And so, yeah, I'm a bit of a party pooper sometimes in telling them, actually,
you're probably not doing that.
You might have done more harm than good, and that's a hard message. But I believe that we owe it to the people that we're helping to do better. These are people's lives that we're affecting. This is not small business.
Oh.
And I ask people to turn the tables and say, how would you feel if someone came into your community and implemented a project that was ineffective or potentially harmful?
Right, from another world.
Right.
Totally. All right, Tori, well, we wish you all the best. You're
Thank
only
you.
30.
Thanks
Lord
so much,
knows what
Rick.
you're going to do in the next 20 years.
We'll see.
All the best to you. Thanks so
you.
much. If you'd like more information, you can log on to beyondgoodintentions.com. More Bay Sunday when we come back. Stay right there.